Thank you. Thank you everyone to be here. And we have the last minute change of topic because Dr. Mark Ashwell has unfortunately fallen ill and he is not able to make today's presentation. We were really looking forward to having him because we are interested in the future of Vietnam from his perspective, having lived in Vietnam for more than a couple of decades and what it's like. However, we also believe that many of the key organizers here, we are professors, so we are higher education professionals. We do not want to not having the event, so we decided to have dialogues on the future of higher education, especially in consideration of during the COVID time, and then our transition out of COVID. As you can see, this is International Forum on Youth. This is our third year. The first year's topic is identity. Second year is migration, and the third year is transition. And of course, 3 years ago, when we set out to plan for what we call IFY, International Forum on Youth, we did not know there would be a pandemic. Nobody wished for it. Nobody had hoped for it and wished and wanted it, but it did happen. So, but it's interesting because it kind of fit well with what we have intended to do, to think about who we are and who we are, people think they are, and then go to identity migration and then migration people, culture, and in last year's cases, diseases and then germs and viruses. And then this year, our transition, if it's well, we now transition hopefully soon out of COVID-19. So all that is to say that College of Kenya is committed to foster dialogue and then a culture of culture understanding. And for international office, we take that upon as our one of the biggest responsibilities to implement tenets of comprehensive international education. So with that said, what I would like to do is I would like to have the panelists introduce ourselves, and I will start. Jia-Yi Cheng-Levine, I'm the Dean of International Affairs and Global Engagement at College of the Kenyans. Tim?
Yes, my name is Tim, and I'm the Director of International Programs at College of the Kenyans.
Wonderful. Dr. Riffel?
Hi, everyone. I'm Brent Riffel. I'm a professor of history here at College of the Kenyans, and I'm one of the two lead faculty for comprehensive internationalization here at College of the Kenyans.
Excellent. Thank you. Dr. Matsumoto?
Hello, my name is Matsumoto, and I teach mathematics here at College of the Kenyans, and I am the other co-lead in the faculty for the internationalization, or the ISP, the International Services and Programs Office.
Thank you. And then we have one key person, Maritza Monzon, who is our logistics support and who has helped. I mean, that beautiful design you see in our background, and then all the emails that you receive from COC Global, this is all Maritza's doing and helping us stay on track, and then making sure everybody knows what things that happen and when. So that's Maritza. Maritza, can you introduce yourself briefly?
Hi, everyone. My name is Maritza Monzon. I work here at College of the Kenyans in the Office of International Services and Programs, and it's been a pleasure to bring these type of events to our community in the first year, and then now we can stream these through the world. So I'm glad that you were able to find us, and I hope that you'll come back for more events this week, or if you missed some events, then we'll be on YouTube soon, so you can catch up on the ones you missed.
Excellent. Thank you, Maritza. So today we're going to have four of us, me, myself, and I'll ask questions, and with Tim, director of the program, Dr. Riffel, and then Dr. Matsumoto, who are the two faculty leads for comprehensive internationalization. For those of you who are joining us late, we would like to let you know Dr. Mark Ashwell, the original speaker who was going to talk about the future of Vietnam, especially with the younger generation coming up, has fallen ill, and that he sent his apologies that he just cannot be here today. However, since we're all educators, we believe that a dialogue on the future of higher education will be pertinent to our theme for International Forum on Youth. So that said, we hope you stay with us, and then we hope that you would also contribute to our discussion. We have 5 questions that we're going to, among ourselves, talk about what our take on it, and then if and at any time, if you have any questions, please do feel free to send it through chat. And if you want any of us to follow up on anything that we said at any time, because we don't want to structure in such is so rigid. It's a dialogue. And the best part of it, I think, because it's going to be streamed, this is now currently streamed live on Facebook, and then like what Marita said later, will be kind of cleaning up a little bit here and there, and then will be posted on on our YouTube channel to be used hopefully by professors in the classroom or anyone who would like to know more about comprehensive internationalization. With that said, I'm going to start with question number 1. Based on your observation from teaching and or interacting with students, what is the one most challenging aspect for students to build a strong sense of community among and with their peers? 1, we know there are multiple challenges. What would be that one most challenging aspect of it?
I will jump in, I suppose.
Please.
So within the context of the pandemic, which is the world we've been living in over the last 20 months, I would argue that if I had to narrow it down to one challenge for young people right now, it's isolation. I think you're asking about building community and networks, and I think our students are very isolated right now. It's harder for them to connect with each other. It's harder for them to build relationships with mentors, with professors. You know, I always like writing letters of recommendation, because what that means is that I'm playing a small part in a student's advancement to Berkeley or to another great institution. And I still write those letters of recommendation, but lately over the last 20 months, those conversations have been challenging, because students have to say more about themselves. They have to remind me who they are. I don't see them every day. And so it's harder for me to know what a great person you are, because we're so isolated. And so for me, that would be the one thing, is isolation. And then out of that isolation, I think stems a lot of other issues as well. I'm sure we'll get into some of those, but that would be my take on that.
Thank you, Brent. Sab, why don't we follow kind of along the line of teaching to hear from you?
Yeah, so maybe I am going to indirectly answer your question first, and I'm going to just tell you what came to my mind first. Okay, so in my discipline, which is mathematics, and I teach a lot of science and math students, and sometimes business as they take calculus. But among the STEM students, we know on campus we have the center called a MESA Center. The mathematics, engineering, science achievement. And they usually, okay, now this is before the pandemic hit us, but typically those students are very close knit. They spend time together in their, hours when they are free on campus. They get together, they have couches, and they have workshops. And that's how they build a community of STEM students. And you have to qualify for the program, and that's a grant-based program. Also, we have communities of athletes. If you belong to an athletic team, such as a soccer team or a baseball team or something, there's a very close knit of community, and then they work with each other. They help each other study, and to help each other manage time. Because they are very busy with their schedule, and so I am from that kind of a mindset. What I'm thinking about is, like Brent already said, the students are really missing their physical, intimate time together on campus, and I know that they can still meet in Zoom, and it is good, if they meet synchronously, just even to chat or to hang out together. But that's the thing that they're missing the most right now. The biggest challenge, I think, is the fact that they are not physically together. And even if they meet together sometimes in synchronous meetings, it's not the same. And that is a very difficult thing to overcome. Now, I have several students currently who are staying in Asia, in their countries, taking my class, and I meet online, and my classes this semester are not synchronous. And so I don't ever get to see them. Sometimes they check in my office hours, but many questions come by way of emails, and I respond to them. And I try to, really give a lot more explanations than I normally do. But still, in terms of building communities or sense of communities, it's very difficult because we are physically apart from each other.
Thank you, Sab. Tim, I think that kind of come from a different angle of it as administrator who runs the international program. What is your take in regarding this question about what's the one most challenging aspect for the students to build community?
Yeah. So in the context of academics, from a domestic student standpoint, I use the term domestic student meaning non-international students. I think everything depends very much on the personality of the individual. And if you just think about just academics, then yeah, that inability to gather live like we're used to in an academic environment is crippling when it comes to building peer groups. But my observation has been that students under the age of, say, just arbitrarily, I'll just choose 30 and younger now, they've been developing peer groups via digital media and communicating with them, even if they're geographically close to each other, very comfortably. And I'm not sure that there's as much suffering as we might think. From my point of view as the old guy, I think that they're doing a lot better. When it comes to international students, this is a big problem, that no one travels thousands of miles to study at College of the Canyons to sit in a hotel room and do homework on online classes. This is a mentally, emotionally debilitating. We have students that they see no hope for a future. They can't see past what's happening to them right now. They don't develop peer groups. And it's really a big problem when it comes to international students.
Coming from an angle, just used to teach, right? So what I miss the most is office hours. Of course, I love the teaching. I love the classroom environment, not interacting. But how we get to know the students is really through the office hours, because students usually willingly come to you. When they willingly come to you, there's so much as a mentor in so many ways that you can work with the students to help them kind of identify the pathway they want to. So just even from a former professor and administrator's perspective, I can even imagine students now, how they feel about visiting professors' office hours. So with that, in the past, I also have students come to see me at the same time. 2 or 3 of them will come to see me during the office hours. And right there, this sense of community when 2 or 3 students come and visit me at the same time. So even I know faculty have Zoom office hours. And I'm wondering how that, you would even have changed or have even helped facilitate with the students and for the students when it comes to sense of community. Meanwhile, we used to do group projects, right, in the classroom. And then I understand a lot of faculty also would do breakout Zooms and then group projects online. But I wonder, though, if that kind of sense of the online collaboration with the classroom contact through Canvas, through Zoom, would that be a strong sense of camaraderie when students work on the project together? So I think the biggest challenge that I can only deduce from this sense is that sense of camaraderie that students may or may not be able to get through the online platform. And then that's one. And then in addition, coming to the international student interacting with them, in addition to what Tim has said, right? Students in the past will come to our office and talk to us, and then other students come in, and then very soon they become friends. That wasn't happening in 2020. So right there for international students, in addition to losing the sense of community in the classroom, a little more isolated than anything else, then coming to international office, we're pretty tight-knit group. Students don't come to the office to visit, did not come to office to visit, did not by accident bump into someone from Brazil, if you're from China, and from Vietnam, that happened a lot in my office. And that sense of community in some ways during the COVID time was gone. So from there, I would like to lead us to the next aspect of it. I think Brent and Sab kind of touched a little bit about. Since we are hopefully transitioning out of COVID very soon, what do you think that students would expect what they want, if you have you heard from your students, what kind of higher education experience that they would like to have?
Well, I can start on this topic, possibly with a bit of a contrarian point of view. So right now we're in this position where, other than the intentionality of international students because they're traveling, if you just think about the regular student, we're sort of in this phase where we think that students are all can't wait to come back to campus. They wish it was the way it used to be, especially students who maybe they had 2019 was their freshman year. But I kind of have this feeling that what's going to happen is when we open back up 100%, meaning all of our, right now, I think we're going to be 50% in spring, 50% of our classes are going to be chairs in the classroom. And I think we're going to find that students after that first semester, they're going to kind of go, man, I'm trying to find the balance there of what really works. I think some of my social activities are good on campus, maybe sometime for group projects on campus, but I don't mind being able to control when I learn with online and back in the Zoom days. And I think we're going to find a little bit of a bounce back. So the analogy would be travel. For a long time, we couldn't travel. And then there's a bunch of revenge travel happening. Everybody's going everywhere all the time. And then they're going to kind of settle back down again. So I have a feeling the expectation of students post-COVID are going to be that learning happens on their schedules, based on their moods and their desires. There's of course going to be deadlines they have to meet, and there's still going to be procrastination, and we do have assessment issues, especially in the math area. But I think that there's going to be an expectation that a lot of learning happens off the campus and in other environments. And when we think about students right now who don't get to build those peer groups, don't get to work with people, I think if you look at from a public health standpoint, we're kind of looking at like a 5-year span right now, maybe starting from 2020, before there is maybe that the social distancing issue becomes less important. And that 5-year span is based on really the technology around messenger RNA and its ability to deliver these miracle vaccines. And so I think we're going to see that students right now, the way that they have to behave is on Zoom. But when they leave us and go to the workplace, it's going to be a lot more like it is now than it's going to be like it used to be. And the workplace, I think, is going to stay a lot more digitally isolated and less person to person. And so we're not doing a big disservice to our students by preparing them for that. And we'll see what happens 5 years out.
That's very interesting. And I would like to see what Brent and Sab and what you think about what Tim's observation. The students want to do work on their own time, but meanwhile they also crave for that kind of more of the in-person interaction. Do you see that? Do you see that, sense that from your students?
I do. I would echo a lot of Tim's sentiment. I think I do think students are craving a return to some sense of normalcy, whatever that looks like going forward. I do think that there's going to be, I think there's a lot of pent up demand for a return to gatherings, social interactions. I think so. I do think there'll be a burst of a lot of institutions putting together events, social events, just to have groups of people together. What's going to be interesting is how that dust settles, because I think Tim's right. I don't think we're going back to the old ways of doing things. So I think there'll be this initial burst of renewed interest in getting together. And then a lot of what is going to be happening over the next several years will be things we really can't predict right now. But I do think Tim's right in the sense of students are going to understandably insist on a more versatile educational system, a more flexible system. I can foresee in my history classes, for instance, students insisting that there's a Zoom option for their on-ground class, that they would like to come twice a week, but they may not feel like it. And they will understandably, as I said, be insisting on that, demanding on that. And because students are shoppers for their education, as well they should be, I think they will shop for colleges that can provide the most flexible educational experience. They will want to seek educational opportunities that are sort of a la carte, where they select certain institutions because they provide great on-ground opportunities, but they may be taking classes at another institution because it fits their schedule perfectly. And so I think the challenge for us, especially if we've been in education for a while, is to anticipate these changes and make quick adjustments. When the pandemic struck, we all made very fast adjustments, in some cases over a weekend, to completely alter our classes. And that had, a lot of hiccups and a lot of fits and starts, but mostly I think we came through that experience pretty well and served our students pretty well. So I think we're gonna have to do a lot more of that, of making quick adjustments and listening to our students. And so, we have a lot of, on our campus, we have a lot of town hall events, right, where we get together and talk about administrative things sometimes. I think we're going to want to have a lot of town hall events with students, digitally and in person, where we ask them, what do you want? And what should this look like? And one of the last things I'll say about this is, it's a challenge for us to listen to students, not because we don't want to. I think we love listening to students, but because college students, most college students are part-time. And then even if you are full-time, you're here for a short amount of time and then you move on. And so it's hard to gauge, it's hard to sort of read the room, so to speak, when everyone's passing through. And we'll make big decisions based on what our students tell us today. And then in a year, a different cohort comes through and they have incredibly different demands. So I would be very interested, for instance, in what high school students are saying right now. I'd be really interested in what middle school students are saying right now about, and they may not know what they want, but I'd like to know what their impressions are, because they're going to be telling us with great conviction what they want. And so I don't know if I'm dodging your question or not, but I think we need to listen to our students, be flexible, and be really nimble. And I say that also because colleges are competing with other colleges for students. And that's rather crass, but that's the reality. And we want those students because we think we offer a good education, but we have to watch what other colleges are doing as well and be nimble in that regard too.
That's excellent. It seems like, higher education has been decentralized, but the COVID just kind of pushed us to really rethink, is really one student's going to stay in one school with all 2 years or all 4 years. And I think, like you said, students are shoppers. They're going to vote with their feet. They're going to go to the schools that would provide them with the information degree that they need and that fit the schedule and the desire and the mood that when they want to study. Debbie, I'll come to you in just 1 second, and then I would like to hear from Dr. Matsumoto about what your take is in terms of what have you heard from the students when it comes to what kind of higher education experience they would like to have post-COVID.
Okay, so I'll make mine quick because I would like to hear Debbie's question as well. But what I am hearing, this is kind of an interesting phenomenon that we are seeing right now. What we have been told by our administrators, and I think this is right, is that students just are dying to have that in-person class experience again. They would want to come to class. They want to participate physically together in discussions. However, when we offer classes, the same classes, both on online and in the classroom at a designated time and location, guess which one fills very quickly? It's the 100% online one. So I think, as you said, maybe they ideally think that in-class, theoretically, in-class instruction is better. But when it comes to, vote by what they take, basically, they're casting ballots on 100% online. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think people are preferring to have that flexibility, that they don't have to travel, they don't have to drive. And if they have other classes during the day, they want to study at night, which, I am allowing them to do by offering 100% asynchronous classes. And so it's not necessarily bad. And I certainly understand that. In fact, my wife is taking classes from the Pierce College in non-credit. They have a bunch of studio art and art history classes. She's an artist. And it gives her a convenience. She says, she would never be able to do this if she had to drive physically to Pierce College every day. So that convenience is here to stay. I don't think it's going to ever go away. I am going to offer like hybrid classes, which would meet not twice, but once a week. And this is going to be in the fall of 22. But, so you can have the flexibility of more time and less traveling, but also at the same time, they can meet once a week and have that personal contact. So it'll be interesting to see there are so many confounding and uncertain variables at this point that we don't really know what is going to happen once the pandemic is over, or if it does get over. But we'd love to see what happens. But that's what I have been observing. Thank
you, Sab. Debbie, you have raised your hand. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, and then feel free to either put forward your question or your comment. Oh, you're muted, Debbie. Hold on 1 second. Debbie, you're muted. So let me ask them. Oh, how's that?
Yes,
Okay,
I work in the nursing program. We actually met once a long time ago when you came to observe a class.
Yes.
But anyway, so we have 4 semesters. First semester pretty much has to come to campus. We have to teach blood pressures. We have to teach pulses, all the hands-on things. We have to teach pharmacology where they're touching everything. And we were one of the groups that was allowed to come on campus fully with PPE on, with the windows, the doors, we did everything we had to do. But I teach second semester also. I help during the first part of the semester with first semester, and then I teach second semester and I do clinical. So I have the best of both worlds for my students. I am doing Zoom, the other instructor, and she did in-person lecture, but then we both go to clinical. So our students meet each other there at the hospital. They form their groups. They have made some friends in first semester. But as I talk to them, a lot of them, as they go to third, and third is doing all in-person classes, they would rather be on Zoom. One student drives from Fraser Park. It costs her $60 round trip to drive, and it's going to get worse with the gas prices. And then time also. She goes to Simi Valley with me, and it's an hour and a half travel time for her. But even coming to campus can be an hour some days. And the same with people coming from other distances. There's a lot of reasons. We have older students who have children, and it's easier to just be at home, kind of thing. So it can go either way, or mix match as far as nursing goes. Yeah.
And I think that's perfect. Kind of lead to the next question that we want to talk about is as professors, right? As administrators, as college, as we are here. We're devoted to higher education because we do believe in the core essence of education for the betterment of the world. So in that sense, but if our students are not engaged, or if we don't offer what they need or what they want, what they desire, and then meanwhile, we also know that in some ways like what we need in terms of betterment of the society. So in that sense, what can professors and administrators and college staff do to help foster an environment that is conducive to networking and to collaboration? So, and then Debbie, we love it if you continue to join into the conversation. That'd be really wonderful, because we really love and I want to have people like you. You have to do all of it, right? And then you have to have that kind of hands-on experience. So why don't we start with Brent on this one, and then we'll come to Debbie. How's that?
Thank you, and thanks for joining the conversation, Debbie. To respond to her point, I think community colleges in particular are very sensitive to economic ups and downs, and we know this over many years. And so you're right. I mean, we have to acknowledge that gas prices matter. I think that the elephant in the room for a lot of our students is a housing shortage, a housing crisis for students. It's very difficult. And certainly all the demands you mentioned in terms of family responsibilities and that sort of thing. I think one of the things, I think this kind of dovetails into your, I hope into your question, Jia-Yi, what professors need to do and what the college, I think colleges need to do is in some ways go back to some of the things that always worked. So for instance, I think student clubs have always worked. Saab mentioned MESA. I think MESA is a great program. For a lot of our students, I mean, we see enrollment declines across the state of California, and a lot of those students are students that don't want to learn any other way but the way they always learned. Okay. A lot of those students are gone because of some of the things that Debbie's talking about, some of these economic and social challenges, right? So I think that we need to capture some of those students, recapture, well, we're not capturing them, they're not wild animals, but we want to bring them back onto our campus with some of the things that we know worked. But then we also have to acknowledge the changes that have gone on. So for my teaching, I have to stretch. I'm okay with technology, but I have to stretch and figure out, for instance, I have often taken students to things like the Getty Museum. I have to figure out, how do I do virtual field trips? Let's do a virtual field trip, right? Saab, I know you went to that Van Gogh, I think you went to that Van Gogh event recently. How do I take students to that? How do we weave that into the curriculum? And I guess this kind of goes back to my earlier point too, is we have to be nimble. We have to stretch here and grow. And speaking just for myself, I mean, one of the daily challenges for me in teaching in the COVID environment is it's been challenging to continue to kind of grow as a teacher, because I'm not teaching the same way I always did. I'm not in the classroom sort of, hashing out these issues and working on these topics. So stasis and sort of intellectual paralysis has been challenging for me, to be perfectly candid. And so how I continue, I feel like I get better in the classroom because I'm in the classroom every day. But if I'm not in the classroom, I have to figure out how I refine my own skills. So not to belabor this, but I think we go back to the things we think always worked, but then refine those and digitize those to some degree. And then I think we go back as teachers back into our own toolbox and think about each topic, each content area. How did I do this in 2019, and how do I do this moving forward? And that, I think, I don't know that I have to rebuild everything from the ground up, but I may be coming close to that, really. If I want to be effective in the next 10 years.
Thank you. What do you think, Debbie?
I agree. I think we need to be a little more versatile, and maybe you do still go to the museum. Maybe you do an actual field trip.
Mm-hmm.
We do bring our students one time per semester in for skills.
Mm-hmm.
So, that could be, I don't know all the terms for what it's called, when it's a little bit on campus and the rest online or Zoom. So,
Hybrid or whatnot, right?
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. How about you, Tim, from the administrator's perspective? How can we foster an environment that's conducive to networking and collaboration?
Yeah. That's a really interesting question, and something that community colleges and also, by the way, the California State University system really struggles with. If you think about student engagement on campus, it's a constant attempt. A lot of the CSU schools, campuses in California are commuter campuses. If you look around the country, a lot of schools are commuter campuses. So unless you're at like a Reed College where everybody who goes to school there is in the dorms, you really end up with, it may not be the sun in the orbit of all the planets of that student. That college may not be that. It certainly is not at College of the Canyons. If you look at 20,000 students that we've got maybe 100 who consider College of the Canyons as their hub in life. So the campus culture might be a bit of a mythology. Now, with that said, there's two other aspects. One is, I think, the type of work that Professor Klein does is live. You have to be there, and that's important. And I think students accept that. They say, yes, this makes sense to do in person. If it doesn't make sense to do in person, then I think we're going to see a future of a declining interest for actually coming onto campus. Which means if we're going to do the hybrid model where you do a lot of online, or maybe you do some Zoom synchronous, and then you do in person, there needs to be a purpose for that, which means the in-person can't just be the same as it would have been if you did Zoom synchronous. It can't be. It has to be something about it that is of a benefit for why you're doing it in person. And if a lot of that is field trip oriented, I think that's really, really good for the students, or really bad for the lawyers. They go crazy anytime we do a field trip. And so we'll have to find a balance there, because I think that that's how we're going to enrich the educational experience. And if you think about one of the motives from an administrator standpoint, one of the motives I have when I go to work every day is, how can I cultivate a relationship with every student? Because some of those students might be contributors back to the college when they become very successful. And that's a big, big part of what makes academic institutions in the higher education world operate. And we need to find a way to make that happen. And you're not going to get that with 100% online. That bond doesn't happen. There has to be something there. And when you look in the newspapers, when I look in the newspapers and I see donations, big donations happening, I always check to see, did that person ever attend that school? It's 50-50. A lot of times the donation doesn't have a whole lot to do with any personal experience that individual wealthy donor had with that particular campus. They might believe in higher ed now. They might be engaged in something on campus now. They might live in the community and be recruited by the foundation. But 50% of the time, there's no actual link. So those links that can be created are precious. So we have to find a way to make the campus transform into a hub which has purpose for students. And if that means we need housing, if that means we need services, if that means we need recreational activities, if that means we need to continue to create robust chemistry and biology labs, nursing program things, then we need to really kind of supercharge those. And then more of the lecture, chalk and talk stuff has to transform into YouTubes, like what this will become. And a lot of that self-learning that students demand, it's like, no, I'll just do a YouTube on it. I don't need to go to a class on that. I hear that all the time. So we need to develop that concept where that's available, and there's a value in our synchronous Zoom. And there's always, of course, going to be those outliers, and as a who want 100% online and just do the asynchronous. But if you can imagine this, really what feels to me is a bad scenario, but that rate your professor thing, what if there was a professor who rated really good at College of the Canyons in history? Okay. And what if every student who was going to a community college decided to take that class? Because you can do that. You don't have to take your classes at College of Canyons. You can be anywhere in California and you can take Professor Riffel's history course, the best history course in the state of California. You can do the same thing with Professor Matsumoto. And so we could end up with basically the only way, and I'm not talking about a MOOC, but I'm talking about those two professors, their classes, online classes, always fill 100%. And next thing you know, they're doing 5 of those every semester and nothing in front of anybody. Because, we end up a whole redesign, not by intention, but because of the demands of the students and just how they vote when they sign up for classes. So we have to create something new. Like everybody has already said, we can't go back to the way things were before.
No, and I know Saab has thoughts on this too, but just before I forget this point, because I think it fits with what you're saying, Tim. I think we have to think about. I think you were headed in this direction, but a redesign of our physical campus. We've made enormous investments, and at this college, and I'm sure with colleges across the world, these are often taxpayer funded. In our case, that's true, and so we have a commitment to our community to have a viable campus space. So as we look forward in the next decade, if it looks like the student population on campus will be smaller, it may be a bigger college overall, but a smaller foot traffic, then I think you're absolutely right. We need to think about what this campus looks like. And it fits with our conversation this morning with another panel, with another presentation about sustainability. We need to think about, we have services on our campus for students experiencing homelessness. We need to think about that. We already are, but we need to probably scale that up. I think about things like maybe we should do intramural sports, right? For students that would just like, because I think part of our health crisis today is also a crisis of lack of physical fitness and health. So maybe we go into that area too. But I think reimagining what the campus looks like, less of an emphasis on whiteboards and meeting rooms, and more of an emphasis on these other sort of, like I say, gathering places. That might be the direction we need to head in.
And I'm going to bring Sab in because, for example, I've seen Sab post videos on YouTube. I follow his channel on YouTube, right? Something I would never really think about doing. And then because of pandemic, Sab is putting out a lot of instructional videos, which I don't think Sab would have thought of doing that if it not been for COVID-19. So in that sense, right? So how do we? So it's like flip the classroom, which is a concept that's not new. It's 20 years ago when Khan Academy started to come up and say, hey, I'm going to teach the kids how to do math, right? And then people, now it's the whole academy going on. So in some ways, I think we're going towards that flipping the classroom. Students learn on their own pace, at their own pace and on their own time. And then when they have difficulty or they have challenges, when they feel like they would need the network, they come to the classroom environment. So the traditional classroom setting is no longer really workable and conducive. It's more like a hub and club-like setting. For students, more like an open TLC, but it's more in a group setting. That, hey, you're taking Math 104, regardless you take from Sabi, you take from Charlie. If you are in Math 104, this is the time come, and then you have learned and you are challenged, you don't know how to pass that. Let's come and work together. And let's come and find tutors to help you. So it seems that the wraparound services have become even more important. Basic needs, right? For students who are housing insecurity, for students who don't have laptops, for students who are in a household over 10 people who are also trying to get out of the Zoom room. So all that wraparound services in many ways become as essential as a content delivery if we were to meet the future of the student needs as we come out of COVID. So with that, I would like to bring Sab into this conversation.
I don't have much more to add because Tim basically said everything I needed to say. He did say over and over that there has to be something that attracts students to, be physically on campus. And so my background, I think, maybe shed some light. I taught at a small liberal arts college outside of the state. And then the reason I moved to Southern California is because I taught, I had a position at the master's college here in Newhall. And I taught there for like 7 years. And what's interesting there is, of course, it's primarily residential, meaning that they have, most of the students who live in the dorms. And so they actually get to know, each other really well. You don't really have to do anything to foster, the culture of conducive to networking and collaborating. And in fact, if I would go to my office at night in the evening to get something, I see students working in a building together, doing homework. And I would just sit and try to, help them out just because I'm there. And they were like, hey, you're here, and so they were doing collaboration automatically because they sort of live together. And the same thing happens in, bigger liberal arts colleges or even universities like USC. Their students, live in that little area south of downtown. And many times they, maybe they don't live in the dorms, but their apartments are all like together and they are, studying until late at night together. That kind of thing happens naturally. So it is a big challenge in the sense that in community colleges, most of the students, as Brent already said, are either part-time or they have jobs, family, and they take classes and then they go away right away. Even high school students who come in for evening classes, they get picked out by their parents, and they're gone. It's interesting how we talked about how we invest in buildings on campus. We have a brand new, beautiful parking structure at the corner of Rockwell and Valencia. With many superchargers, okay, and and there's a rumor that by the time the pandemic's over and we are fully open, all the cars will be self-driving, and we don't even need the parking structure. Who knows? Okay, so again, things are changing so quickly, and frankly, I don't know what to do to collaborate to foster that collaboration. one thing that gave me a little hint is that the comprehensive internationalization conference that we attended a few weeks ago, there are colleges who are developing courses together with an international, school, and they have one instructor, one class, but it's offered by, college in America, as well as some university in Spain or, in the Netherlands or something. And half the students are from the US, half the students from Europe. And, there'll be one class, they're all together in Zoom. That kind of thing could facilitate sort of this is a big collaboration overseas, international collaboration, but there's no reason we can't do it locally. So we may have a class consisting of COC students from San Francisco and students from Colorado and the East Coast, as well as, maybe a couple of other countries, and attending different universities, and this is what sort of Tim was talking about. We may have one, but by the way, I have like the entire lectures for my calculus class and for my liberal arts math class on those channels that Jia-Yi was talking about. So if somebody's interested, they can listen to my entire semester of lecture, away from COC. They don't even have to be a student because it's available to everybody. And I got the hint of this because before the pandemic, I had this student who served in Iraq. He was in my Calculus 3 class, and he was attending my lecture, but he also wanted to get extra lecture. So he would go to this sort of a well-known professor called Professor Leonard, who has all kinds of lectures. He basically took the entire lectures for the whole semester in the classroom with his students. I don't know how he did that, but I guess the students gave approval, but permission. But so this student was actually listening to the entire lecture, one lecture after another from Professor Leonard, just so he can understand the contents as well as coming to my class. And so I thought, hey, if that can be done, why not? I can do the same thing. So anyway, so there are things we can do, but I agree that there has to be something to bring students together. I don't know if intramural sports would be possible for a community college. I know it certainly works in a liberal arts college. I was very involved in a intramural college in my undergraduate institution, but it may be really difficult to do in a community college, given that we are a 2-year college.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of follow up on some of the things that Sab mentioned is like, everything is changing so fast, right? So by the time we think of something, the world perhaps is ahead of us, because being a part of the institution, sometimes the law and regulations that were designed to protect the students end up become a channel that actually a mechanism that slow us down. So with that, how do you think that, how do you see higher education is changing in order to meet the students' needs? These things are so fast, changing so fast, it's so unpredictable.
Yeah, so I don't mind jumping in on this one. So I've always had the impression from students, regardless of who they are, not every student, but most students I run into over all the decades that I've been engaged off and on somehow with higher education, that most students are looking for that end of the line. They're done with the college, and because it's a gateway that opens up, and it's a barrier until that happens to move on to what they feel is the rest of their life. And back in my day, you picked a career, you stuck with it 30 years was the idea. Today, 30 months and you're an old guy. So so that part of it has changed, but the gateway hasn't. And so what I see for education right now is that most students still believe that it's almost more of a barrier, and it's hoops they have to jump through in order to accomplish what they really want to do. Get that paycheck, get that job, get out in the world, start a family, buy a house, whatever it is, satisfy their parents. Somehow higher education, and I think in particular in the community college level, we've got to find a way to make it so that instead of being viewed as the gatekeepers for the future, that we are the facilitators of a better future. And I think that is a structural redesign in a lot of ways. And we've talked about some of those elements. But if you were to talk about what do higher education need to do to meet students' needs in the future, it's going to be that transition from gatekeeper to facilitator.
Yeah, I completely agree. If I could just build on that, I think you're spot on. And to my mind, just to add to that, I think higher education is going to have to focus on a few things, a lot of things, but one is affordability. And community colleges are well positioned, at least in California, for that. And they're in the United States, at least, there's some legislative motivation to move towards a free model that's in flux right now. But there's certainly that's a serious conversation going on. Whether that's going to happen today or next year, who knows? But affordability. And the second thing I think that higher education is going to have to do is focus on relevance. My history classes, Saab's math classes, these have to be relevant. We have to make clearer to students why this is important, what skills you're going to get out of this, right? And it has to be reinforced. And so at each point in a unit of my class, I have to reinforce that, reiterate that to my students, that there's a reason that the state of California or whatever institution you're in thinks you should take this course. And then I need to make that clear and transparent to you throughout the process. So affordability, relevance, and then pathways, career pathways. I need to make clear, and institutions need to make clear to students how it goes back to this point about gatekeeping. Much less gatekeeping, no gatekeeping, and more about these are the skills you're going to get if you come into this institution. And these are the pathways that are going to lead to you getting these kinds of jobs. And we're going to hopefully train you in a way that will make you flexible, in a way that will allow you to get skill sets that will lead to the career that starts in a year, and that career goes on for 10 years. But we've also hopefully trained you in some other areas that you can then transition into that next phase of your career. And so again, affordability, relevance, and career pathways, and then driving those home. Colleges are decentralized and democratic institutions in some ways, and wonderfully so in some ways. And we often, as educators, sometimes are distrustful of sort of top-down hierarchy. But I do think in this sense, it's going to be helpful from the top down to reinforce those values, so that we build structures at every step of the way, all the way down to how we keep the grounds. That really kind of drive home that idea of again, this is a place that welcomes you. This is a place that's not going to break your bank and cripple you financially. This is a place that's going to be offering timely, relevant, if not cutting edge, as close as we can get to it, education. And then again, that this is going to train you for that next phase of your life.
Excellent. Debbie or Saab, would you like to follow up anything on what Tim and Brent just said before I conclude this question and move on to the next? Please, Debbie.
Yeah, I like the idea of telling the students why they have to. I'm tired. I lectured this morning starting at 7:30. Why they have to be there, why they need the class they're taking. All of those of you that help that help pass the students through and teach them all the basics that they need before they come into our nursing program. That's so important. If they don't get through that, they're not going to get into the nursing program. And one cool thing about nursing is we tell them, I read an article about 10 years ago saying the kids of today are going to have 3 careers in their life. They used to be, you got a job at Lockheed and you worked there till you retired, 1 or 2 places over your life. Well, now they're changing jobs continually. They can do that in nursing. They can work in the hospital. They can work in an office. They can teach. They can work for insurance companies, all these different things. So, there's opportunity out there for them to do it. Sometimes there hasn't been, but now there are so many people retiring. And so encouraging them is so helpful. And now hospitals are requiring they want bachelor's degrees. So our students, once they get into second semester, we have the big push that they can currently get into a bachelor's program. And we've got connections with higher institutions such as Northridge and some other online ones. But it's so important that they understand why they're doing what they're doing. And it is a means to an end for them. Yeah, thank you.
That's terrific. So I kind of want to kind of bring this before for the next concluding question, and then also open up more questions from the audience, if you like. So what Tim and I we've been when we go out for international recruitment, right? And then this is like the forever fight he and I have. So students, what I would say, so I would say, what do you want to study? They say, I want to study computer science. I want to study sociology. I want to study economics, right? So we are still very much bound by this traditional sense of the discipline. My major is English, your major is math, your major is history, and Tim's major was environmental health. Oh no, public health, right? And then is nursing, and then Marita's international education. We're still very much stuck into this traditional way of looking at higher education discipline. So we heard students will change 3 careers. We have heard students have changed 7 careers, during the course of their lifetime. Regardless 3 or 7, it's a lot, right? It's not unlike when we're in, I'm in English, I'm studying English, even though I'm moving to administration, but anyway, I'm still in higher education. I went to English as a major in order to engage in higher education as a profession. So in some ways, I kind of have the detour, but I still remain in the same concept. That's my career path. But our student, what Debbie was saying, even though nursing, right? Nursing, they understand the concept, the basic, and you become an RN. But then you have choices, right? Working for insurance company could be quite a lucrative career if you want to. And then some people continue pursuing more specializations in different areas of nursing. We have one of your former students who was an international student. She is certified in 3 areas, OBGYN and also emergency operation and something else. And then that girl in Florida is making a killing in her living. Just because she, in addition to traditional, just one way of this is what I major in, she also branched out. And I think that's what we're going to see our students, next generation of students. It's very few of them, I think, is going to see that I'm the history major. And yes, I may still take all the way through to get my PhD in history, but there's so many different ways in the process. They might be exposed to different career path because it's no longer just I get my PhD and I go teach and that's that, right? Or economics, right? And then also the big data and then computer science, all these areas. So I think for a while there was a conversation on campus. I don't know if you guys were involved with this or remember this or not. It's more about what do you want to do? Do you want to change the world? Do you want to heal the world? Do you want to, I can't remember what's the other one. Do you want to build the world, right? And then somebody make a joke about, do you want to turn your back against, away from the world, right? So for those of us who are more of people who don't feel comfortable with it, talking with people. So in that sense, right? So do we still, as long as we're stuck in the traditional sense of discipline, it's going to be very difficult to do what Brent is talking about. How do we stay relevant? And they also, because students nowadays, they live in a strong sense of urgency. If I take this class, would it help me get a better job? If I get a certificate, would it help me raise my salary, right? Or get maybe opportunity to promote as a manager. So that's part of the reason we're losing a lot of students midway through. Not because we're not successful. I think we are successful in building that confidence in them. Now they get better jobs. So when they already reached their immediate goal that they went to school for, why do they need to continue to stay and rack up the debt, right? That what Brent was talking about, not so unaffordable. So, and then the state now has a different kind of major for state funding, for state college funding, right? It's about student completion. Well, but if the student get the job, they actually are successful. We are successful getting students better jobs. But then the state doesn't fund the college. And the college, no, we have to force students to complete. So there's so many dynamics in the play that making people like us, we want to make changes, keep kind of hitting into the regulation or funding formula, and then make it more difficult to address the students' needs. Oh, I want to change the world. Well, I want to paint the world into the way that human interactions are beautiful, right? All that, but if you are English major, I have to take those classes to get my degree, or I will not even get an interview, right? So not only in higher education need to change, also the way the world is thinking about skills and about certificate and about degree program also needs to change. So with that, Sab, I would like to bring you in to conclude this question. If you would like to ask something.
Yeah, I wanted to say to answer your questions. Also, I want to follow up on what Brent was saying on the relevancy. You were mentioning this as well. So one of the things I'm optimistic about is the, and I have to say this, I guess, because I am what is called the AB 705 math coordinator for my department. And what that means is I am in charge of making sure that AB 705 is implemented. And that is a new state law a few years ago. It was signed to place basically all students in transfer level classes. And so for the first 45 years or so of the existence of COC, almost every student was placed into a remedial math course. Many times, maybe half the students will start like 4 levels before. And in fact, I used to walk around and meet people in town, and people say, "What do you do?" And I say, "I teach math at COC." And many times, those people, neighbors, people in town would say, "Oh, you know what? I am almost done with that degree or diploma or whatever, except," and I said, don't tell me, I know how you're going to end this, right? You're short of your math requirement. And they say, "Oh yeah, I just need to take those math classes." And the thing is, half the town were almost associate degree recipients because they just never were able to finish this. And one of the encouraging signs is, people have noticed the importance of relevancy. Do students really need to take pre-algebra or, pre-calculus? Well, no, not necessarily, unless they are going into sciences or math or computer science. So one of the things, we have a pathway in statistics that's a non-STEM pathway. A few years ago, I developed and wrote this class called liberal arts math class, which is where they study logic, growth, finance, math and arts, math and politics. It's very, very important from the democracy, the idea of, applying mathematical concepts or critical thinking, quantitative reasoning concepts into political science and how we vote, as well as appreciating art and making money, being wise financially, making intelligent logical decisions, taking risks with probability, understanding statistics and data. And so that has replaced, for many students, that has replaced their algebra requirements, and we no longer offer hundreds of remedial math courses. I think it's a big change. And you talk about how community colleges need to change as the society changes, and that change I think was a very positive thing. It was mandated by the state because it was a state law that was passed. But as the community colleges implement it, basically what's happening here is we are saying, hey, look, you no longer need to know Latin to be a functional citizen of our society. You don't have to know Greek or Latin. You don't have to study conjugation of verbs, right? And so, we are saying you don't need to be masters in algebra. You just have to know how to reason mathematically. And so that kind of change is welcome. And we are implementing that. We're doing English and math, and we got this national recognition in form of the Bellwether Award. And so, I am excited about these kind of changes, and I think we need to promote that kind of a change to stay relevant. So students will say, and by the way, I've heard this from my students, like, hey, in the first 2 weeks of your class, I mean, the stuff I learned in your math class is much better than like everything I've learned in the entire, K through 12 math classes. And so that's a positive thing. And we need to, do more to push for this focus on relevancy and affordability. That's another big issue. But anyway, I'll stop there.
But to your point, Sab, I think what the math department has done, and it's, I think we're seeing it in action. I think what they've done is incredible, and I think it's been such a benefit to our students. And it reminds me of something I would love to see more of. And I think that in my field of history, we could serve this goal, which is financial literacy. right? Because I really think, we have students that are accepting student loans, and they may or may not understand actually how that student loan operates, how it functions. They know they have to repay it, but even that might seem abstract to them. And so how to run a household budget, how to do these day-to-day things. And I would love to see history and English and political science and obviously math work together across disciplines to develop that kind of thing. I actually think it should be taught at the K-12 level, even as early elementary. How does money work? But I think the math department, and you're right, it was implemented by the state. There was some institutional inertia. It's hard to get all of us old dogs to learn new tricks. But it's also clear that there was real enthusiasm from faculty like you and others who saw the value in this. And then because you could have just complied with the law, but you went beyond that, and the awards that you've won signify that. But I think that's a good lesson for other disciplines in our college and other colleges. Again, going back to that idea of relevance. But for me, that financial literacy is one that I really, it's something that I really feel strongly about.
Yeah, and by the way, my neighbors are not mad at me anymore. And really, my neighbor right across here, she was a nurse to start with, and she was short of math, the credit, and she went in the statistics route, but she got her degree, and she's got a better job now. So I mean, this is really happening.
Yeah, it's changing lives. I think people who felt like math and other subjects had really worn them down and been a roadblock, and now we're going in another direction. So it's fantastic.
So with that said, I mean, I love Sabi's analogy of, we don't learn Latin anymore when it was like the core requirement for higher education. Right. Mm-hmm. So we had the courage of dumping some of the things that were just not needed for people to function well as a thriving citizen in the United States. And we saw that. And then I think the world now is gradually changing towards that direction. And I think COVID-19 has in many ways forced us to see it and adapt. So with that said, I want to bring in kind of a larger scale question and discussion here is, how do you see the United States? How can we continue to be the democratic ideals to attract the brightest mind? Case in point, both Sab and I were international students. Right? I was also not an international student here, Helen. So we're international students. We came here on F1 visa, then we end up staying. So because we came here to the United States because we knew this is the place that's the cradle of modern creation and intelligence. And then if we want a good life back to our home, if you can afford it, if you accept it, you have the ability, then you came to the United States to study. It seems that from Tim and I's angle, looking at the world in terms of international education and student mobility, the United States is losing that ground. Students go to China now because China is offering incentive and this unbelievable entrepreneurial opportunities for students. So students from Africa and Southeast Asia, instead of coming to the United States, students are learning Chinese. They go to China. Similarly, right, students now are going to Australia. And then on top of that, our neighbor, Canada, when the previous administration decided to place obstacles for international students to be able to get good jobs. You know what Canada did? They're so smart. They would post ads in the San Jose, Silicon Valley area. Basically, we say, US want to give a job, come to Canada. So we trained a lot of students getting PhDs from Berkeley, from Stanford, but they could not have a pathway to citizenship or to very high-paying jobs. So they end up moving to Canada. So I'm thinking, well, Canada is smart. US trained them, then Canada benefit from them. So just looking from the international educational world and then seeing the trends of student mobility, I get very worried. I think the US is losing ground from being that democratic ideals that people come to build themselves up, right? To change their family, to change their country. And then now we're losing that. So what can we do? And how do you see what US can do to regain that ground, right? To attract continuously the brightest mind to come to the United States?
Well, I'll jump in really quickly. I would say I share your concern. And I think the events of the last few years have shown you to be correct, in my view. I have a bias towards history, so I would say history has a role here to play, actually, because history can teach us that the United States has been successful in part because of its open doors, because it wanted people who wanted to be here. So that's important. And that has been, in my mind, a net positive for the United States, that people coming here it's been beneficial to all of us. And the last thing I'd say about that is that all Americans should share your concern, because if the United States wants to maintain the standard of living that it has or has had, it absolutely has to be more inviting to people as students, as immigrants. And I say this because if you look at our demographics in this country, we're becoming an older society. And in order to, again, maintain that GDP and maintain that status or standard of living, we are going to want younger people to do the work, but also to provide the creativity and the ingenuity and the innovation that will do some of the things we've been talking about all evening, right? So I think the matter is urgent. I think the economics of it are urgent. I think the demographics of it are urgent as well. And then again, the last thing I'd say is that I would argue we have to, in terms of going back to your question about democracy, I think we have to work together to turn down lower the temperature of politics. I think for many people, politics has replaced religion. I think for many people, politics has replaced their enthusiasm for sports. And I don't know how, but I think we have to step back from that because it's unhealthy. And we go to barbecues with our neighbors and we talk about politics now. That's not the way I lived not that long ago. So I think that's really important. And again, I think it's urgent.
Thank you. Tim, Sab, Debbie?
Yeah, I wanted to mention the answer is really easy. Okay, so you make America
Go.
Make America a much safer place. Make sure everybody gets healthcare. Get public transportation to be practical, and have a welcoming society. Lower the crime rate. That's all you have to do.
And I would say make housing more available for people. And,
affordable. Yeah. And so that's something I was going to mention. We had, I just was reading an LA Times article about how you see Santa Barbara students who are living on streets, like in the vans and stuff.
Yep.
Yes.
And, because people just can't afford, one thing, they took too many students in. They don't have dorms. They don't have apartments that are affordable. And it's happening all over the country. Even the ones you would think that, who come from families that can afford to have to pay for their students' accommodations. The students are living in their cars. That is a serious issue, including the food the food insecurity. So, yeah, make sure we have enough food and places to live and healthcare, and that's it.
You said that was easy, though.
Oh yeah, okay. Just a few things.
Okay.
All right. Okay, Debbie?
I don't really have much to contribute in that area. I don't know a whole lot about it. I don't know when it changed. When you first came, you said then you could get a job. It wasn't an issue for you.
So what it is because when international students come here to the United States, you're allowed to work after completing one level of a degree. One level of degree or certificate. You're allowed to work for a year. And then I think during the President Obama time, and even earlier, that we saw that there's a big shortage when it comes to STEM area. So it was changed that if you're international students on visa, that you were able to work for up to 3 years, which was wonderful. And then we also have something called H-1B visa that is attracting people, like, for example, from India or from other countries, that people really good in the STEM area, then attract them to come. And then if they do well, they will offer pathway to green card citizenship.
Okay.
And then that opportunity was tremendously reduced by the previous administration. So we have lost a big ground when it comes to attracting the brightest minds in the STEM area. If they come here, they couldn't work. They don't want to come. So, or when they come here and then in the middle of it, then we change policy on them. So the student end up going to Canada or Australia.
Sure. Okay,
that was-
thank you.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
How about Tim?
Well,
see-
also you
go
should
ahead.
add that, the international students under the F1 visa can, while they are in school, they can't work off campus, even like part-time. They are not allowed to, and that is that causes difficulty. They can work on campus if they can find something at a very low wages, but that's also causes difficulty from students from poor countries.
Right. Tim, since you have seen more of the world than I do, what do you think?
Yeah, we have definitely, as a country, we have lost the moral ground, the moral high ground. Whether it was a myth or not doesn't matter. And in a lot of places we had lost it a long time ago, but there were still a lot of places where we still had it. Even before COVID, I was answering questions in places like Costa Rica about President Trump. And I remember making a slide that showed the blue states and the red states. And I drew a map that showed the distance between Los Angeles, California and Washington, DC, and Los Angeles, California and San Jose, Costa Rica was almost the same. And my whole premise was, we don't care in California what that guy in Washington, DC says. We're the third biggest economy in the world. Our leader is Brown. And he says, this is a safe place to go with a lot of opportunity. So forget what you hear in the newspaper. And I would spend, instead of talking about the merits of the 2+2 transfer program or the opportunities that can happen through mobility around the entire country and all the schools you could go to, the only thing parents want to talk about is my kid can get shot by somebody who loves Trump. And that was the whole conversation for 90 minutes. And I'd talk about it over here, and then another parent would ask it. And then I'd talk about something else, and then it would just keep on coming back. And they didn't believe me. I don't know whether it's because I didn't do a good job of explaining it or because I look the way that I look, which is the stereotype of stuff. But when it comes to the moral high ground, we've lost it. And China is capitalizing on that. They are reason people from all over Africa and Asia are choosing to take their degree programs in China is because they are starting to believe that China has the moral high ground. Especially in Africa, a lot of public works programs, a lot of contractors, a lot of interaction is with Chinese companies. And so they're getting more familiar. And the Chinese are pretty smart. They grab the really bright minds and they say, hey, you have a place in our community. It might be a communist community, whatever that means. I mean, we're not socialist in the United States. So whatever it means, but they offer that. The other thing is that when we in the United States bring in people, educate them, and give them great jobs who don't look like me, there's going to be a lot of people who look like me, who didn't go to college, who had this entitlement mentality of this union job, probably in the Midwest, or had heard stories about it, that feel like the reason they're not standing in a giant house with 5 cars is because of that guy who doesn't look like me. When that's not the case, that's not true, but that is the mentality. So you get this political opportunism that's happening in this polarized world where they can say, wow, hey, I can make a bunch of money if I just convince all those guys that it's not their fault, that they didn't do any homework, they didn't do what their parents said, they just did drugs, and they had expectations that things would just be handed to them. So that's working really well. And a work visa, a company pays to get a visa for somebody to stay past their OPT or their training and their work period after their F1 visa. They pay, and that costs about $30,000. It's not cheap. $30,000 a company invests to have that person stay. If it was so easy to just grab a white guy who looks like me and do that job, there's no way companies would be spending $30,000. There is a need in this country for talent and capability, and it's not an entitlement that is just being handed to people who get into this country to go to school. It's not clear anymore to the rest of the world that the USA is the place of best opportunity and also is a safe place. That concept of democracy equals a safe place, that doesn't have that hold anymore. Now, a lot of that is gone. A lot of people are starting to hear the message that comes from places like Russia and China, where they're saying, look, they're not that different than us. You think they are, but they're just better at camouflaging it. Really, it's the same people making all the money all the time. It's not that different than here. So come with us. And that's what we're seeing. So
on that note, I would like to use the remaining of the 7 minutes to bring something hopefully more hopeful. It's then bring back the higher education, right? I mean, since we have lost the moral high ground, let's say if we have, what can we do? Like, I would like to hear from everybody at this couple minutes. What can we do for people who work in the higher education and passionately believe in education and what education can do? So what can we do to regain that ground, or to bring back a little bit of that moral high ground, or the sense of prestige and then also security for people who are looking for their next generation of lives and where they want to send their students to? What can we do?
You know, I have one observation of that, and it connects to what Tim was saying. I mean, I think actively try to form relationships with people outside of your immediate circle. Actively try to build bridges. And I say actively because, I mean, stretch yourself. I mean, push yourself into new areas. And I think that's increasingly difficult in a very digital world. You know, social media has opened up a lot of opportunities for people, but it's also, you know, created what we might call like an epistemic closure problem, where I am just talking to my people about my problems and my ideas. And so it hasn't been this, you know, liberating communication tool as we were maybe led to believe. So maybe step off platforms like that a little bit more and on to more analog footing and more of those kinds of relationships would be my response.
Yeah, so when I went to Japan to, you know, represent COC to bring students at the college fair there, it was hosted by the embassy. Many parents, just like Tim said, many parents, the first thing they ask is, you know, isn't the United States like really dangerous? People get shot, you know, every day. And we say, you know, I said, well, we are in the suburb of Los Angeles, not, you know, Chicago. No, I didn't say that, but I want to make sure that they understand that, you know, we are concerned about safety. And of course, Santa Clarita is in a relatively safe neighborhood, so that's not too bad. But we have to assure them. And the thing is, and again, we have you know, established a partnership with a university in Nagasaki. But what they're saying is, once you meet somebody from COC, and once they can trust us, you know, then they will have a much easier time convincing the students and their parents, hey, you know, I know these people, this is a safe place. And of course, one of their faculty members came over to see COC as well. And so that kind of a relationship, you know, allows us to have the trust, and that they can feel secure, or they feel safe in sending their students to us. And so that is one way to, you know, to convince them of the safety. And we, you know, make sure that, hey, look, we will take care of them. If your student gets sick, this is, you know, how our plans. If there's an emergency situation, this is how, you know, we will treat your students. And so that kind of relationship, I think, is really important.
Thank you. Tim, couple minutes.
yeah, I think that there's two things that can happen. Saab talked about one of them already, and I think the other one we've talked about, and that's that if we're going to, for instance, if we want to attract more international students, a great way to do that is to make sure that healthcare and, you know, those kind of things, those problems all disappear. But a major thing that we could do is a model that I saw at Drexel University in Pennsylvania. And that's where a student starting early on in their career as a student would spend 1 semester studying and 1 semester working in the field. 1 semester studying, 1 semester working. They had 3 semesters a year. So it would rotate all around and around. But one of the things that we could introduce if we want to be this amazing new institution is that concept that you start getting work experience and experiencing work and developing those soft skills. We've talked a lot about that in other parts of the IFE forums. You start doing all of that, you start doing it as an institutionalized part of the program. And you start early, not just an internship that happens once or twice. We're talking continuously entering into workforce places. I know it's going to be expensive. I know that there's a huge amount of legal risk. I know the lawyers are going to hate this, but I think that that's something we need to do to stay relevant.
So I would like to conclude very quickly. I entered into education because I think if we want to change the world, education is the fastest way. To some people, it seems counterintuitive. It's going to take a long time for students to finish degree. But if you think about it, everything we want to change, it takes 1 generation if we go through education. So if by the students go through my classroom, they say go on to work or go on to master's degree and go on to do what they do. I always believe that if we want world peace, we have to put the next generation of students in the same classroom. So we have students from Taiwan, talk to China, talk to students from Dubai, talk to students from Brazil. So with this, if students get to know each other and then truly in a classroom collaborative environment, I go back to what we talked about earlier, then they say in the future, when they become prime minister, they become the presidents, it's like, well, no, I mean, my best friend is my roommate from my college days is from Brazil. No, I mean, the media portray of the negative news and then try to totalizing, that's how Brazilians are. No, it doesn't work for me because what I know about people from Japan and from Brazil, they are not like that. Right. So it's create that kind of setting and environment so students have that opportunity and platform for that interpersonal relationship in order to be carry out through the rest of their lives, that they stay with them and become that friendship and then potentially opportunity to work together. So I always believe if we want to build world peace, we have to go through education. We put students from different parts of the world in the same classroom to give them a safe environment, to be able to flesh out whatever the differences that they have, to work on the project, to build for a better future. And then if we don't, I see that as our responsibility to create that safe environment, either online or hybrid or in person, right? And then also create on-campus environment where students can feel safe, they can come regardless of their sexual identity, regardless of ethnicity, regardless they have to pray 5 times a day. If we create this kind of wraparound services, meanwhile, allow them to be able to be free to express their opinions and talk about the differences. By the time they finish our program, our degree, more on to the next stage of their life, and they're the decision makers. They'll be the voters that would decide on their national policies, on their foreign policies. These are the students, if they had gone through our program, they take classes taught by professors, math and English together, math and history together, taught by the professors, that they will be able to say, oh, okay, actually, I can logic through and then, imagine combine critical thinking and history. Imagine combine ethics and math and statistics, right? So students can only see how collaboration is truly possible if different discipline professor can collaborate and then learn from there. And then that's how I think the boundaries can be piece by piece be broken down. And then that's when negative news outlet trying to persuade people in one way, thinking one way for whatever political or economic reasons. And that's when the students said, no, apply my critical thinking. Then from Dr. Cheng-Levine's class, no, I need to really look at what's the source of this information. No, that's not the people that I know from China would do. And then that's what I think what we do every day. I mean, I love my job. I mean, even though as a teaching and then coming to running an international program, bring international students here and now establish program like student mobility and the faculty lecture program. Those are the things that we wake up every day to know whoever we talk to for the next generation of students, they will make better choices 10 years from now. And I think that's how we change the world. So with that said, it's 6:30, and I so appreciate everybody being here, and then whoever watch online and then later watch the recording later. Debbie, thank you so much for being here. We're going to try to see if we can reach out to Dr. Mark Ashwell to see if he will want to reschedule the talk. And if he does, we definitely will send out the invitation to let the campus community know.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I hope to see some of you to our events tomorrow, starting at 11 o'clock, talk by a high school activist student. Now I think it's age out to college already from Poland. And then the afternoon 2 o'clock is really exciting about the student panel. We want to hear from the students. And then in the evening, we bring everybody at 5 o'clock, bring everybody back, and then to talk about what are the actionable items. We don't want this just to talk. So I mean, so many things that Brent said, I love it, right? And how are we going to make it as actionable projects that what we can do on campus? So the next phase of EFI will be more about doing something with every time when we have the EFI forum that's been run. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any last word?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.